Hello and welcome to the Bcamp podcast. I am Richard Carey, and today we are lucky to have with us Akshaya Murthy, who is the Director of AI Transformation at Zendesk. So, thank you for joining us, Akshaya, and welcome. Maybe you can start out and just talk a little bit about your role at Zendesk and how you got there.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, Richard. So excited to be here. This is the first podcast I'm doing that is catered to actual students, so this is great. So I can preach to the choir in some way. My day job as a director of AI transformation entails two or three distinct roles. One, look at the landscape of how we operate as a company and see where the bottlenecks are and think through, almost philosophize what AI can do for us in the long run, given our strategic objectives. The usual ones: grow revenue, reduce cost or optimize cost, position the company for the future, etc. Second, I also look at the risk associated with AI and what do we need to do to control for that. So I also lead the governance of AI and privacy at Zendesk. And thirdly, I sell. I sell to the stakeholders across the company the story of AI and how it can help us. So my third role is a storyteller. So those are three roles I play. How I got to this position: this isn't a position that was advertised. This was something that organically happened. So if I go back to where I come from, and I'm an engineer, I'm a tinkerer at heart. I've started and failed at multiple companies, built multiple products and not succeeded. Got some traction with a few, but then didn't follow through. So I've always had this mindset of looking at new technologies and understanding what it can solve for. Um, and specifically in the business context, trying to understand what problem are we trying to solve and what is the best solution to fit that space, and how can we implement it in a sustainable fashion, so that it falls within a maintainability window. You can keep the platform going for years and years, because we want to make a good investment and not repetitive investments over time. So with my engineering degree and this whole mindset of just experimentation, what I've done throughout my career is followed what I love to do. It could be understanding the business, it could be looking at new technologies, it could be playing around with new technologies. And that naturally led to exploring AI, because it's such a powerful tool for the human race in general. It's unmissable. You had to explore it. Started to play around with some use cases, started implementing some code on my own time, and quickly realized, as a lazy person that I am, this could be an invaluable tool to automate my day-to-day life, and discovered a broad range of use cases across the company and pitched it to the leaders here, and they were amenable to listen to me and try and play the game, experiment. And right now we have 40 odd AI use cases being experimented across the company. So, long story short, I got here by accident because I had the mindset to explore and see what I love to do. And here we are today.
Wow. Well, it seems like you have the perfect skill set to do what you're doing. So maybe it was a cosmic accident or something. Yeah. So awesome. Thank you for that. And what advice would you give to engineers who are looking to get into AI, students, technical people that are looking to get into AI?
Yeah. There's no one clear path, but the path that seems to have worked for most individuals I've talked to and engineers I've talked to, uh, is that you look at AI almost as a co-pilot to your day-to-day work and day-to-day learning. So I reference back quite frequently to this book called Co-Intelligence. And basically, it breaks down the use of AI in your day-to-day life into 4 or 5 segments. I don't fully remember it, But one of the use cases is to use it as a mentor and a lifelong learning coach. So, as a learning engineering, if you go back at a meta level, is a framework for thinking. Engineering is problem solving, looking at a problem, arriving at the most efficient solution and the most plausible solution that can be easily adopted. Because any solution without adoption is a failure. Um, so, given that context, AI is just another technology, although it's a very powerful technology. What I would tell engineers to do is think about not just using AI as, oh, this is a shiny new tool, shiny new technology. Apply it in your solutioning. Your solution is not going to be 100% AI. It's probably going to have 20% AI right now, maybe 80% AI in 5 years time. But think through and reassess your mental model of problem solving, because now you don't have a very rigid framework. For example, for software engineers, you don't have a rigid framework of APIs. You could actually use a very flexible AI framework to solve the same issue, solve the same problem. Implement those, fail at it, tinker around, and fine tune your mental model of where the applications are for the new technology. The way I see it in the enterprise and business context is the media, at least, and the books and the authors and the experts are saying you can do everything with AI. Now, that's not a story I can sell. That's not a story anyone can sell. You have to be very crisp and clear about what problem you're trying to solve and how using the new technology. So tinkering around will give you that mindset to think about how will you solve this problem with AI. Second, understand what problem you're trying to solve, because a solution without a problem is useless. So really solve a problem and get to an end state where you can run it fluently, you can run it efficiently, you can run it on a consistent basis, and the solution works. Um, and learn to apply the technology in your daily life. For example, use coding tools, use automation tools in your day to day life, implement something for yourself, and understand what you love to do at the end of it. AI is so huge as a topic and an area of expertise. Figure out where you want to fit in, because you may not be interested in business process AI. You may be interested in voice AI. You may be interested in machine vision. So through that experimentation, you should arrive at what you love to do, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be stuck doing something you don't love. I think that has to be paramount. Number one, what do you love to do? Discover that. Implement those solutions to problems that you love to solve, and adapt and change your mental model to see how AI and where AI belongs in that ecosystem.
I like that, and I've heard several people talk about this idea of using AI to learn more about ourselves, which you touched on maybe a little bit in terms of learning what you like and using it as a coach is sort of like a reflection of what you're good at. Do you have any specific examples
Yeah,
of this, or?
I use ChatGPT quite extensively to as a mentor. Um, a couple of examples I can give you. I went through this leadership training program that the company had sponsored, and basically you get high level concepts of acronyms and frameworks, and oh, you should do this, you should be an empathetic leader, you should be listening to your employees. But if you have 20 direct reports, all the best trying to do that. So one way I utilize ChatGPT is try to understand the individual in our one-on-ones, and try to understand the communication style, and give ChatGPT that background and say, this is how this person communicates. These are some of the outcomes of the work this person has done, and these are some of the strengths, these are some of the weaknesses. How should I work with this individual? Because it's not about always about feedback. It's also about mentoring and coaching along the way. That's what leaders are supposed to do. So ChatGPT has helped me a lot in doing that. Second, it has immensely helped me in communication. So I use this tool called Yodli, Yoodli. So it gives me real time feedback on what I'm saying. You use a lot of ums and uhs. You use a lot of non inclusive language. You use so many repetitive terms. So it has helped me improve my communication over time. Um, so those are a couple of ways of improving myself with AI. And it's not very expensive. If you think about a voice coach, if you think about a speech coach or somebody who can train you on how you talk, it can cost you hundreds of dollars per session. What I'm paying is $20 a month. Okay, that's supreme value for money. Uh, in that sense, I think everybody has access to this technology that can be used on a daily to make themselves better, get feedback. Uh, Another tool I use is called Pi, which is a personal assistant app. I use it as a mentor, as a counselor. When I talk to the AI saying, hey, this is what I went through in a meeting today, it was really bad. Can you give me some feedback on how to improve? And it provides me step by step, gives me exercises. I've used it to sleep. So basically, I go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I can't sleep. Can you help me sleep? It makes me do breathing exercises sometimes. It makes me watch my thoughts sometimes. It's crazy. It's amazing on how many ways you can use AI in your daily life. So those are some ways I think your students can try to start experimenting.
Yeah, I love that, and it makes me think of Bcamp. Actually, one of the reasons we think this works well is because we're kind of running an internship program, but we're gathering tons of data. All of
Mm-hmm.
the conversations people have in the Discord, their live presentations, their GitHub commits, and their peer evaluations to both like give them feedback and also to help them find a good match with an
Yep.
employer. And so it's like this idea of just like use your data to get feedback and get better resonates for sure. So yeah, I love that. So I'd be interested to hear about some of your favorite applications. You mentioned there's maybe 40 of them that are
Yeah.
ongoing right now. What are some of your favorites? What are some of the hardest ones that are difficult to figure out?
My favorite ones, I'm a visual guy. So I like to learn by watching, uh, and I like to use by watching and not much from a coding perspective. So I love the Adobe tools, Adobe AI tools. It's crazy what they can do. They can generate entire marketing campaigns. They can automate the entire marketing workflow. Uh, that's super powerful with a button press. Um, ChatGPT, of course, is my favorite. It's my go-to tool. The ChatGPT is my daily assistant to do stuff and get stuff done. Break down agendas, build executive summaries, help me prepare for meetings. Some of the other difficult use cases. One of the major use cases that we in the process of going live, we started last week, and we've been doing this POC for a year, is search. One of the biggest challenges any enterprise has is data is sitting in 400 different applications, and there's no way to access it. So we've implemented a platform which uses generative AI to bring all that information together. So I can ask a question like, what is my sales quota for this month? And bloop, there it is. I don't have to log into a system. I don't have to go search for information. And I can even follow up questions. Okay, what are the big deals in my quota? What deals are moving forward? What should I focus on? All that is right there. So it makes your life really, really productive. But I say it is very difficult to roll out such enterprise wide platforms because now you'll have to convince all the stakeholders across multiple value streams. It could be um, talent acquisition, it could be procurement, it could be quote to cash, sales, accounting. You have to convince all of them, first of all, to allow you to connect those systems and make them talk to each other. One, which everyone's very guarded about. 2, you'll have to go to IT to make some adjustments. And as they say, all great ideas die on the beaches of IT. So that's a hard problem to solve. And Unfortunately, our IT folks have been very, very collaborative. Um, and at the end of the day, you have to prove that the platform's working to all these stakeholders. You will always have some supporters, some detractors within the set. But if you have more detractors with a very powerful technology, which could put people on the back foot saying, what does it mean from my team's perspective? Do I have to fire anybody? How does it change how we work? Do I want to take on a big project like this, given all other objectives and priorities of the company? So that's a really hard thing to do. You have to be a good communicator. You should be a good negotiator. You have to build camps, build alliances with camps. So interesting journey over the last 1 year in getting that. Thankfully, we've been successful in rolling it out despite some opposition. We had mostly supportive stakeholders at the company. The other more political use cases, which I wasn't part of, is code development tools. Now, engineering is a white collar job, very highly paid white collar job. And if you looked at the earnings report that came out of Alphabet yesterday, 25% of all their new code last year was developed by AI. So, how do you convince leaders that, hey, by the way, 25% of your engineers are not needed anymore? Because that's going to be the reality. It's engineers are going to become more of product designers and thought leaders than people who sit and code. It's just like um, any other automation that's happened in the past. Mathematicians, quote unquote mathematicians, who are doing projections in finance companies before the release of Excel, well, they weren't needed anymore. Excel would do those calculations for you. So, no disrespect to mathematicians or finance people, uh, but that's the kind of impact. There is going to be white collar jobs that are at risk, and just convincing them that this is a worthwhile investment, and we are not just looking at a monetary perspective, the human perspective of better code quality, selling the story of let's use this as a co-pilot rather than replacement measure. Those kind of conversations are not easy to bring up, nor are they easy to be sold. So those are some of the challenges. On the technical side, as I mentioned, maybe our infrastructure is not ready, our data is not clean, the security of these products is not up to scratch. Privacy is a big issue. We have to comply with laws and regulations. There are laws coming up on a daily basis with respect to AI. So that adds to the complexity. And where you are at an advantage is when you have a holistic bird's eye view of all these touch points that could derail a project. So a single engineer may not be aware of all this. So you have to build bridges. You'll have to work across the value chain and figure out what are the pitfalls. And that comes with experience. Um, so those are some of the challenges we've had, and we'll continue to have those challenges. These are massive projects. These are massive undertakings, years long undertakings. So I hope that gives you a glimpse into what you can expect.
Yeah, no, fascinating. And I'd be curious to hear if you can share a little bit about the tech stack. So take the forecasting example and understanding what
Mm-hmm.
opportunities are there and what are going to close. Can you talk a little bit about the tech stack behind that?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the legacy tech stack, if you take the quote to cash workflow, right? Uh, you first start with the CRM system where you put in the lead. I think this customer is going to be a potential buyer one day. Let me put their contact details in. Then from there, it gets picked up and somebody works the deal, and then you got to create a quote. That's a CPQ system. So there's a handoff between CRM and CPQ. And once the quote is done, it goes into uh, a billing system, once you've provisioned the SaaS, let's say it's for a SaaS application, once the customer says, I'll sign the contract, you provision the thing and you sign a contract. So there's a contracting system and provisioning system, and then you got to bill them. So there's a billing system, which we use Zora. And once you bill them, you got to account for the revenue flow and the revenue recognition on a quarterly basis. So we have a revenue system called Zora Revenue. And once the revenue is recognized, you got to put it in the accounting books, which you need a GL system or a general ledger system, which in our case is NetSuite. The data models in each one of them is different. Okay, so it's crazy that even as a small handoff between each of these systems, even if a field changes, you got to rework the entire integration, and these are multiple integrations. So that's the tech stack. Now, if you put a generative AI layer on top of it, we use a couple of things. We use Workato as our integration platform.
Mm-hmm.
And we are experimenting with their AI tools right now. We are experimenting with their AI orchestration framework right now. So what it can do is it can tap into multiple systems and say, this is your quote. This customer hasn't paid their bill last month. So you cannot create a new quote. So you can do workflows like that whenever possible. You could, you will have to have a massive engineering team to make those happen. But with AI and agentic frameworks, what you can do is you can build very flexible integrations with decision making inbuilt. You don't need a rules engine. You can make the LLM take decisions based on if this deal falls in the bottom 20% of the deals, don't approve it. Done. So you eliminate that manual workflow altogether. And the tech stack on top of that for search, we have a platform called Unleash, which is a RAG-based search framework, which we have purchased from the vendor. We use OpenAI for all our LLM needs and embedding needs. And once the inference is done, we feed that data back into either Workato or Unleash or whichever GenAI application that is to take the decision and take the next best action. So I hope that gives a glimpse into what our tech stack is underneath and what you can do on top of it. Now, for the future, Oracle just announced the end-to-end AI for their Oracle ERP systems. ERP systems are, by the way, the best solution to all this, but those are massive monolithic systems, very expensive, so not feasible for all companies. But in the absence of that, I think in the future, you won't need monolithic systems. I think you can make do with these best in breed siloed systems that do what they do best and use AI to bring together all that information, make it work. Mm-hmm. So that's my point of view. For most companies that don't go beyond $2 billion revenue. If you want to go beyond $2-3 billion revenue, you're playing a different game at that point. You need different breed of systems. Mm-hmm. Those will be ERPs, and they have AI built into them in most cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you. That's helpful to understand some of the underlying tools. And do you have to take all the data from all those systems and put it in one place in order to use Unleash? Or is it able to interact with each of the data sources?
No, we don't have to. It's all we have to do is make an API connection, and if needed, we can select what fields and rows and columns we want to connect. Otherwise, you can expose the entire data model to Unleash. Cool. The other part, if you truly want to do analysis, right? Unleash is not the tool. Workato is not the tool. You may need a data warehouse tool. Yeah. As a data warehouse, we have Google Cloud. We are also experimenting with Snowflake. And Snowflake gives us so many capabilities from an AI perspective. Basically, we can bring all our data into Snowflake. And anyone in the company can access that data and analyze that data with out-of-the-box AI, out-of-the-box ML. You don't have to implement code to run ML models. For example, we talked about forecasting. If I want to do revenue forecasting, for 4 quarters out, I can take all the data ever and forecast it in 2 minutes, just by typing in a natural language prompt. So it's insane that it would. I don't. I'm not saying it would replace an entire team of data scientists, but it's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
Say at an individual territory level, they don't need that level of accuracy, right? They just want to know what the projected sales could be in that territory, so they can give upward guidance to their bosses for the region. 85-90% confidence is sufficient for such use cases, and you can use that out of the box. Think of it as democratizing data access, democratizing AI, machine learning, analysis to everyone. Anyone with no background in statistics, no background in engineering, no background in coding can use these tools. Um, Another demo I saw last week with Snowflake Cortex AI and Cortex Analyst, basically you can build dashboards on the fly by typing in, give me a trend graph for this, give me a scatter plot for that, give me a heat map for this, do anomaly detection on this data set. And it's all automatic and in real time. There's no waiting, going back and forth. And one very powerful use case I saw was you can send an entire dashboard, say, to the CEO and the CFO. Usually what they'll do is come back with a laundry list of questions saying, explain this to me, explain that to me, why the revenue dip, why is the cost so high. Now they don't have to. They can just chat with the data. They don't need an analyst. So it empowers the leadership layer to a very large degree. And the same questions they would have asked an analyst, and it would have taken 2 weeks for everyone to put together, polish the data, go through the internal bureaucracy of exposing data to the C-suite, etc., etc. They can do it on their own. So it really makes organizations more nimble. I could go on and on. The landscape is just insane with the kind of use cases that companies are putting out. So if you do want to bring all the data into a data warehouse, Snowflake gives you wonderful, wonderful tools built in.
Yeah, very cool. That'll be interesting to see how this evolves. Well, I want to change gears just a little bit, Akshay, and talk about your education.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear just your thoughts, good, bad experiences from your own education, whether that's formal or informal education.
Happy to. I was a mediocre student, so let's begin there. I grew up in India. Uh, I was good at science and math. Uh, it was easy to me growing up, and it kept me interested. Social sciences, not so much. Arts, not so much, but science and math, I was really interested. Did my engineering in Bangalore in a small school, and I did my engineering in electronics and communications. I did not really enjoy it, but I enjoyed what I did. That is, experimenting in the lab, doing cool things, and building stuff that nobody cared about. So that's where I learned a few things about how to think about problem solving. Parallelly, I was also working at a game development startup in Bangalore. And we were making India's first 3D game and a 3D game engine. And that was a cool experience. I used to be really good at 3D modeling, a little bit of scripting here and there. So that and engineering put together gave me a worldview of, you can use this to design new things. You can use this to design whatever's in your head. You can make it come true. So I went on to found my own startup. We made mobile games, a lot of Java games, a lot of animation, 3D animation. Sold that, went on to work for a multi-billion-dollar company called Wipro Technologies. Even there, I got into a lot of trouble because I didn't want to work on boring projects. I only wanted to work on what I liked. So I ended up in cool projects, cool companies, like Microsoft Game Studios was my first project, where we developed and designed a lot of games. It was cool. Then I worked at Hewlett Packard in Oregon for 3 years. on building printers, completely different domain. But I learned about enterprise architecture and building networks and designing hardware at Hewlett Packard. Then went on to, I always had this feeling internally that I wanted to understand business. I wanted to do an MBA. So I went and got my MBA from the University of Pittsburgh. Deeply, deeply thankful to all the professors there. I, on a daily basis, apply what I learned in my MBA school rather than in my engineering school. Did a bunch of consulting, worked in banking, worked in audit and compliance across 10 years. I was at Deloitte, I was at BNP Paribas, Oracle, and then I got this opportunity at Zendesk to head the internal audit division for technology, and took that opportunity. That morphed into an AI role once we went private. We were a public company. So as you can tell, my journey has no correlation with my education. And I say that a lot to who I talk to. It's all about what you tinker along the way. I was fortunate to move around the country. I was in Pittsburgh, I was in Oregon, then I moved to California. I've been to several states in the country when I did my consulting gigs. Met a lot of people. Tried a couple of startups. We tried an advertising startup to show ads to people on bus seats. So Greyhound Megabus, we had a little prototype going, which would, based on location, showcase ads on the first versions of Android tablets. iPads weren't a thing back then. Failed. We were too early. I tried my hand at starting an investment management startup using automated trading. That went pretty well, but then we couldn't expand because it was a Canadian company and we couldn't expand into the biggest market in the world, America. So dropped that. Tried my hand at hardware, designed a little beeper with a display, which would, if you put in a car and it'll monitor the back seat, if there's somebody in the back seat and the driver's out, it'll start beeping. So basically the use case was, don't leave your baby behind in a hot car. Tried it out, didn't really scale. And hardware is and that space is still open. No company has done it, which is very, very surprising. That very few high-end car companies are saying, okay, we'll put a sensor for your baby. They shouldn't die in your car. I think it should be at the low end of the scale, because those are the people working 3-4 jobs who may end up leaving their kids out of stress, etc. So that space is still open if your students want to build something. AI can truly augment that field, I think. So that's my journey. It's a mishmash of things. I've done all sorts of stuff, and that's what helped me. Connecting the dots between random things, connecting the dots between random concepts, and thinking about, oh, this idea can work. Oh, that can be automated. So that's my brain, and a lot of people don't like it, including my wife. It's also called scattered brain, but it's worked for me so far.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like one of your strategies is just to be exposed to a lot of different things and then
Yeah.
make connections between those things in order to add value. So I like that approach. And I think that it sounds like that includes formal education, informal education, all of it. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, take it all.
Agreed.
I really like that. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Akshaya, for joining us. This has been a pleasure to talk to you and hear your story and what you're thinking about. And yeah, thank you for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was fun. This was a very cool conversation. Looking forward to more such conversations in the future.